Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. Liverpool are taking on Roma at the Stadio Olimpico in Rome on Wednesday night in a Champions League semi-final, second leg tie, leading 5-2 from the first leg. It is an absolutely massive game, potentially and almost definitely the biggest game that Liverpool have had in probably around about a decade. Certainly, it dwarfs a lot of our other recent semi-final appearances, I think, because this one really is about establishing ourselves back on the European stage. Back when we used to appear in these kind of games, it was a regular thing. It happened most seasons, on and off. Liverpool were either in the semi-finals or the quarter-finals. They were dominant in Europe in those latter stages of the tournament under Rafa Benitez. Since then, we've had an incredibly dry spell, and Liverpool are finally back where they belong, at the business end of Europe's premier competition. And this is where we prove that we have finally established ourselves back amongst the elite. And so far, it's been going pretty well. I mean, we are 5-2 up from the first leg. Obviously, a fantastic performance. Unfortunately, it's not quite dead and buried. A lot has been made of that over the past week, especially because, of course, Roma were in a very, very, very similar situation when they came out of the Stadio Olimpico against Barcelona. We all know how that one ended. I'm going to talk later on about the sort of parallels between this game and the Barcelona one. But obviously, like I said, it could have been so much better at Anfield, but it was, at the end of the day, an absolutely fantastic result. And Liverpool are essentially in pole position to go through. So this is an absolutely massive game. It doesn't need any hyping up. And, coming off the back of the Stoke game, which I'll talk a little bit about because I wasn't able to do a post-match video because I was a little bit too busy at the weekend. The Stoke game was just one of them where, Liverpool admittedly didn't play well. But I said this on Twitter, that the best teams in the Premier League are capable of winning games even at their absolute worst. And Liverpool were pretty poor in the game against Stoke. And yet, if the referee has eyes or if the linesman has eyes, then they spot that blatant handball. Liverpool come away with a probable win after scoring a penalty. And then if it isn't a handball, we probably have a tap-in into an empty net as well. So unfortunately, I think we have every single right to feel robbed in that game. And we weren't necessarily that bad. I think we deserved to win it more than Stoke. We had a few good chances, especially in the first half, that unfortunately we spurned. But at the end of the day, when you've got a Champions League semi-final coming up a few days later, it's really not worth getting hung up about Stoke, and we can think about the race for the top four after this is done, because obviously this is the absolute top priority for Liverpool at the moment. So team news going into this game, there isn't a huge amount going on. Obviously Liverpool's squad is still incredibly thin on the ground. Thankfully, it looks very much like Sadio Mane will be available for this game after suffering a tiny knock in the first leg against Roma. He obviously didn't play in the game at the weekend. Danny Ings filled in for him on the left wing, but it does look very much like Sadio Mane will be back and available for this game, which is a massive, massive boost for Liverpool. Henderson and Trent Alexander-Arnold also suffered minor knocks in the games against Stoke. They had moments where they looked like they might have to come off injured. Stoke was certainly doing their best to try and get rough and ready with Liverpool, trying to take advantage of the fact that we would be pulling out of challenges and trying to save our players' fitnesses for the game against Roma. Fortunately, we did largely get out of that game unscathed. Doesn't seem like we've got any fresh injury concerns, but like I said, our squad is still very, very thin on the ground. So there aren't too many massive calls to make with the starting 11 prediction. I think we all pretty much know exactly the team that Liverpool are going to put out, barring any mad formation changes or anything like that. It is almost definitely going to be Loris Karius in goal, almost definitely going to be Virgil van Dijk and Dejan Lovren as that centre-back partnership that performed so well, barring a slightly dodgy period in the last few minutes against Roma. Fullbacks are going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andrew Robertson, injury stuff permitting, of course, with Trent Alexander-Arnold. Midfield, I think we can all expect it to be Henderson, Wijnaldum and Milner, seeing as they are our only fit midfielders at the moment. And then the front three, of course, Salah, Firmino and Mane. And while obviously Liverpool are now being backed into a corner with our team selections, who really do have no other choice, if we're not going to rotate, if we're not going to make conscious decisions to drop the quality of the team, to rest players, there really is nothing we can do in terms of bringing in different players and shaking up the starting 11. It is very clear now that that is Liverpool's best starting 11. And if I'm perfectly honest, I actually feel like that's almost worked in our favour towards this back end of the season, because earlier on in the season, we really didn't know what our best midfield was. There were times when we actually had about 6 fit midfielders. We also had Oxlade-Chamberlain, Emre Can, and even Adam Lallana on top of the current crop that is actually still fit. And I don't think it really helped us because there was so much rotation that we never really put together any chemistry in the middle of the park. And as a result, we did often rely on that incredible chemistry between that front three of players who did play week in, week out, and were able to build up a sense of understanding about how one another played. That was how Liverpool got all their goals. Now that we've had to resort to a situation where we have to be starting the same midfield and the same defence as well behind them, there's a much stronger chemistry throughout the entire team. You know, there's a real sense of a footballing identity that doesn't just run through those front three, it runs through the entire squad that's out on the pitch. And I think that's been hugely important for Liverpool in these latter games, at this business end of the season, in these massive Champions League ties, because it just brings about a little bit more discipline. And obviously it's a really thin tightrope to walk, because one more injury and we are basically done for. We have, especially with the midfielders and the attackers, we suddenly have a huge hole in our squad that we aren't really capable of filling. But that's what these games are about. That's what this intense end of the season is about. That's why you have incredible players like Mo Salah, because you're happy to run the risk that if they do get injured, you're scuppered. But if they don't get injured, you're going to be absolutely brilliant. And that is the situation that Liverpool find themselves in. At the moment, it's fantastic. And all we've got to do is just cross our fingers, toes, and absolutely everything else to ensure that there are no injuries. And speaking of injuries, Roma have got a couple of concerns of their own going into this game. It looks very highly likely that Kevin Strootman will not be available for this game, which is a big blow for Roma in midfield. And then it's also looking possible, this story's kind of died down, whereas the Strootman one has had traction throughout the week. It's been consistently mentioned, but there were rumblings earlier on in the week about the possibility of Perotti also not being available. I think he sat out Roma's win at the weekend, as well as Strootman. So Roma's midfield does look like it's going to be a little bit depleted. There are suggestions as well that they're going to go back to their more traditional 4-3-3 formation. They obviously switched to a very successful 3-4-3 in that 3-0 win against Barcelona. That worked to devastating effect, but it had a lot of cracks that were exposed in the game at Anfield, and Roma did switch to 4-3-3 by the end of that game. That was where they had their most success, so that is a possible worry for Liverpool. But the thing is, where Roma had most of their success, certainly earlier on in the game, was by flooding the midfield with high-quality players. You know, in that 3-4-3, you had Nainggolan playing in part of the front three, which meant that he would actually often drop back. You also saw even Edin Dzeko was dropping back into deeper areas to flood the middle of the park and help Roma dominate that area of the pitch, and that is how they gained a foothold earlier on. Obviously, later on, it wasn't the same, really. They played that 4-3-3, and it worked very well, but I think when you look back at what happened with that part of the game, we actually only made a few tiny errors. You know, Dejan Lovren, who had a very good game otherwise makes one error, gets punished for it with a goal. James Milner makes a potentially not even an error with the handball. You know, it's still a contentious one, I think, to give a penalty for that, and we get punished to maximum effect for it yet again. So I think it's unfair to suggest that maybe Liverpool fell apart at the hands of Roma's 4-3-3. And I think without Strootman, without Perotti, they can't quite flood the midfield and try and dominate that area of the pitch like they did in the game early on in the game at Anfield. So I think that is a huge boost for Liverpool. But obviously, as we all know, Roma will have to play a completely different game to the one they played at Anfield, because they are chasing the game massively. And this is why I think that Liverpool do have a massive chance in this game. And I'm not going to give 3 reasons why we'll beat them, although I think we can certainly do that. I think we can probably do something similar to what we did against Man City, where as soon as we got that killer goal that killed all their hopes, they basically fall apart, and Liverpool actually ended up coming away with a win in that game. I'm kind of hoping we do something similar with this one, in that we score 1, maybe even 2 early goals to cancel out that away goal advantage that they will be so heavily relying on in this game, and that way we can then dominate the game and hopefully come out for a win. But obviously that is incredibly optimistic, and the priority for Liverpool is not just to win, as much as that's what the players will say, but simply to qualify. So here are my 3 reasons why I think Liverpool will qualify and make it through to the Champions League final in Kiev. So first of all, like I said, Roma will have to come out at Liverpool in this game. And while that could potentially be the undoing of us, because as I said, when they came at us and they put pressure on us early on and late on in the games at Anfield, we did look ever so slightly shaky. We didn't look like we really knew how to deal with it. But what happened after the first half an hour against Roma at Anfield, we suddenly worked out how to beat them, and it was all based on that high line. It was based on the fact that Roma were trying trying to put pressure on, that they were trying to push play further up the pitch and get at Liverpool. Once we worked out a formula to counteract that, they had absolutely no answer for it. And it is quite simply, you know, I think it was De Rossi talked about Liverpool's long balls, and we've obviously heard this from Fernandinho before. To an extent, they're kind of right. It's not long balls in the sense of hoofing it hopelessly up to Fellaini. The long balls forward do have a specific target. There is a footballing reason why we play that way, but it is essentially about getting the ball forward as quickly as possible and exposing Roma's high line. It's something that has worked so well so far in the Champions League for Liverpool, because a lot of the big teams do play those defensive high lines. It's naturally how they know to play, with the fact that obviously in their respective leagues, they're often playing against lesser opposition. That is just how their defence is. That's the formation they default to in games naturally. So it's been great for Liverpool in the Champions League, because it's something that we exploit so well, with the pace of our attackers and the speed with which we can get the ball forward in transitions. And I just think if Roma do have to come at Liverpool, unless they put the pressure on like they did in that first half hour where we didn't have an answer to it, as long as we work out how to get the ball past them and get at them, we should be getting a lot of goals in this game, and that should be what sees us through. And on the subject of counter-attacking football, my second reason, Mohamed Salah. I mean, I've said it so many times, I'm pretty sure I said it for the first leg as well, and I mean, it was kind of right, wasn't it? I mean, when Liverpool needed a man to break Roma down, when they needed someone to kick-start the route, Mo Salah was there, and he did it with aplomb. He just has that extra quality, so when Liverpool do bomb forward, and you just need someone who can get the killer pass, or the final killer shot, or just kick-start things, and suddenly be the spark and the catalyst for something brilliant, we've always got Mo Salah ready to do that. He's just on another level from everyone else on the pitch. We saw that with the way that he hits that brilliant shot against Roma to go 1-0 up, then the wonderful chip over the goalie and the brilliant run to make it 2-0. That is what Liverpool need in this game. We just need someone, like with the City game as well, where as soon as we get our first real chance to break forward, we know we can rely on that one man to finish off the chance and get Liverpool got the goals that they need to progress. And finally, like I said at the top of the video, all the talk going into this match was the possibility of Roma doing a Roma on us, and effectively doing what they did against Barcelona, where they held on to their sort of away goal advantage from the first leg, used that to their advantage, came at the opposition and came away with a magnificent 3-0 win that completely overturned the deficit against all the odds, with a fantastic performance in front of a very, very impressive crowd, I think it's safe to say. But the difference here is that I just don't see Liverpool being as complacent as Barcelona. You know, when people look back on the performance Barcelona put in that game, they basically went in with the idea that they kind of had this God-given right to win the game, that they'd done so much in the first leg that they deserved to go through. And when you compare that to how Liverpool have been in the Champions League this season, you know, you look at the 5-0 win against Porto, we were even nervous about that. There were people going into that second leg thinking, you know, let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is nowhere near over. And with the Man City game as well, we won that 3-0. We didn't even have the away goal situation coming into it, and we were still really nervous going into the games. And that was not reflected in the players, because I don't think they were nervous as well, but it was reflected in the mindset of the players, in that they knew there was a task ahead of them. They knew that the job wasn't done, and I think that Liverpool will just show this game so much more respect and so much more sensibility that Barca did. And obviously, with it being a semi-final as well, with that place in the final at stake now, I just can't see the players dropping off their levels and allowing Roma to exploit that. I just think Liverpool have got the steel, they've got the game management, they've got the belief and the fight as well to see out this tie, win the tie, potentially even win it on the night as well, and make it through to a Champions League final in Kiev. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. The post-match video situation on this is a bit hazy at the moment, because I am going into Liverpool to a bar to watch the game, so I'm not entirely sure whether I'm going to be able to do something. I might live stream some post-match reaction from my phone. Let me know what you guys want me to do. I could do a Periscope thing on Twitter if you want. I could live stream on Twitter. I'll work out how, on Twitter, not on YouTube, sorry. I'll work out how to do something if you just let me know what you guys want to see. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. And I'll see you in a bit for possibly some post-match content after we've hopefully reached a Champions League final. Bye for now.